Hey guys, disease of the day, everyone's favorite time of the week where we dive into illnesses and disease states that, show up in a lot of us and what can we do about it, right? Simple ways that we can get ourselves feeling better fast. So, what I want to dive in today is Candida. This is such a hot topic. I feel like everyone's talking about it. It's kind of the buzzword. This is the root cause of all evil, right? We went through, oh, it's all gluten little while ago. Now it's all Candida. Candida is the problem. Every time I go on to Facebook, Instagram, this seems to be popping up. And I don't know how many times I listen to people talk and they tell me that they have systemic yeast, a candida overgrowth. That is the root cause of all their problems. And it very well could be. But I want to dive in today to really what it is, the symptoms, what you can do about it, and to see if you really truly have this or not. And it also can be mistaken because it's also very similar to another condition. We'll talk about that too. So first, what is, a candida infection? What is a yeast infection? And it is basically, an infection overgrowth in the body of a yeast. Normally, it is the Candida species. And that is really present in all of us. That's something that we need to understand that there is yeast in all of us, and it is present everywhere. It's present on our skin, our mucous membranes, our gastrointestinal tract, our genitourinary tract. It's in the air around us. There is no way to not have it in us. So people who say, oh, I want to get rid of the Candida, you can decrease it, but it's in all of us. It's in the air you breathe. You cannot avoid it. And normally we live symbiotically with it, right? Our body knows what to do with it. It doesn't get overgrown. We keep it at normal levels. Life is good. But occasionally there gets to be a little overgrowth. And that's where it can become a problem and show up as an illness. So common candida infections that we normally see are going to be the vaginal yeast infections in women, oral thrush, diaper rash, things like that. Now, on rare occasion, if you suffer from an immunocompromising condition, it can really infect the organs and the tissues and become life-threatening. And that is rare. That is actually what I would consider a systemic yeast infection because it is systemic in the body. So risk factors for infection are going to be, again, like I said, that impaired immune function. If you are somebody who suffers from an immunocompromising condition, you are at risk. So if you are diabetic, if you're pregnant, if you have a lot of courses of antibiotics in your life, if you're someone who's had a lot of treatments, you've been sick a lot, you've had a lot of antibiotics in your life, you're at high risk. Also taking oral contraceptives, taking birth controls, you're at high risk for having a candida overgrowth. So what's interesting is around the late 70s, this candida-related complex that I'm going to talk about today, this idea was really introduced. And what that means is that a non-systemic infection can cause a wide array of systemic symptoms and exacerbate some various disease conditions. I'm going to repeat that. So what a candida-related complex is going to be a non-systemic yeast infection, so a more localized infection, like we're talking about, like a vaginal yeast infection, the oral thrush, things like that, can cause a wide array of systemic symptoms and exacerbate various disease conditions. So now you can see why there has been some confusion over this terminology, because the systemic manifestations of symptoms have been mistakenly called systemic yeast infection, systemic candida overgrowth, when it really truly isn't. The systemic yeast infections and candida overgrowth are really what's only used for those immunocompromised patients that are in that life-threatening condition where it's infected their organs and their tissues. So you can see the difference where that term really shouldn't be used, but is mistakenly kind of gotten into our culture as being a very common term to use when people don't understand that it's actually not what they're suffering from. So this candida-related complex, or it can be called a candida hypersensitivity, you choose whichever term you like the best, is what a lot of us who do show up with a yeast overgrowth problem, this is what we're suffering from if we're having these systemic manifestations in a localized infection. Okay, so what are the symptoms? There's a lot of them. And they can cover from, we're talking depression, anxiety, hyperactivity, irritability, headaches, poor memory, concentration. Those issues start to pop up, chronic diarrhea, acne, dry skin, PMS. You can even have exacerbation of symptoms with MS, systemic lupus, certain anemias. It will increase food sensitivities and even increase schizophrenia in a lot of people, which is quite impressive. I always say that's something you really want to pay attention to. So, where does this really lie in the body? Where is this occurring? Most of the time, it's going to happen in the gut. It's going to hang out there. This candida overgrowth, this imbalance is going to occur in the gut. In women, occasionally, it can show up in the vagina with those vaginal yeast infections. So what's interesting about this is that they found that there are 79 distinct antigens that have been found in just one species of Candida. That's just one species, 79 distinct antigens. And if absorption of just one of those 79 antigens gets into the bloodstream, so if it gets through the gastrointestinal mucosa, it can cause allergic and autoimmune responses. That's very profound. If just one little antigen sneaks through and can cause an autoimmune reaction in the body. That's why you can see those symptoms of MS and systemic lupus can get exacerbated if you are having this CRC, this Candida-related complex. So, I won't even really go into all the toxins that also show up from Candida, and those are really well known to suppress the immune system. They damage the gastrointestinal mucosa, and they can also cause like nutrient malabsorption. Those type of things also show up. So how do you know if you have it? Well, it's really hard. There aren't many tests out there to accurately diagnose this. I wouldn't know if I'd even say any of them do accurately diagnose it, the ones that are out there. Again, you're going to look at symptoms. We're going to look at physical presentations a lot. So you're thinking of if you have a history of recurrent vaginal yeast infections, or oral thrush, a history of oral thrush. If you've had a lot of antibiotics in your life, if you're somebody that feels like you've always been on antibiotics, that's something that's going to kind of show up in my head that maybe we need to dive into this. If you've taken oral contraceptives for a long time, that's also something to think about. Or glucocorticoids. Those also can help, cause these problems and exacerbate symptoms. So, but the thing is, it's also very, very similar to, if you watched any of my other videos, the one on hypothyroidism, it is actually very similar symptoms to hypothyroidism. So you don't want to assume that you just have it, one or the other. You really want to see a professional to dive into these symptoms, to really take a look at what's going on, to make sure you're getting the right treatment, the right course of action. You don't want to assume just because it's a hot topic and you read a couple symptoms and you read an article on the internet that this is exactly what you have and you should be hopping into an anti-Candida protocol. So again, what do you do if you do have it? Well, as I said, they have these anti-Candida protocols. They are really intense. They're really restrictive. If anyone's ever done them, they're pretty rough, and they're going to really kill and die off those Candida as fast as possible, and they're going to throw you into a Herxheimer reaction. You're going to feel like you've been hit by a Mack truck. They're very restrictive. You're not eating much food. You're eating very, very limited food, very little carbs, and it's going to make you feel pretty junky while you're in that die-off phase. And so that's something I would only recommend if your doctor tells you to do it, if you've been diagnosed as having CRC or a Candida hypersensitivity, that this doctor feels that is the way to go and to get this Candida out of your system, to get those levels more at a manageable level for you as fast as possible. Understand if you do decide to do it, you're probably not going to feel good for a little while. What to do if you think you might have it, but you really don't want to dive into one of those protocols. There's some simple ways you can really manage the Candida growth in the body and keep it at bay naturally. So decreasing simple sugars, remove them from your diet. I'm going to talk about this for just about every possible thing known to man. If you want to feel better, get rid of the simple sugars. That means get rid of the white sugar, the white flour, the white rice, anything white, because it's going to break down, get into the bloodstream as sugar pretty quick. It's going to spike the blood sugar level in the body. Candida loves it, absolutely loves it. So you want to get rid of it, right? You also want to look for food allergies, because they kind of go hand in hand. If you can uncover any food allergies that are going on, remove those food items to allow that gastrointestinal tract to relax and start to heal, it's also going to lower the Candida overgrowth, and it's going to manage those levels better because the gastrointestinal mucosa is healthier. That's also something to think about. That's where probiotics are also going to come into play. So if you throw some probiotics into the mix, they also inhibit the overgrowth. They keep the levels at bay because they are now introducing healthy bacteria into the gut. Another interesting thing is removing dairy products. So there was some research where they took women who had been suffering from recurrent vaginal yeast infections, and they put them on a protocol where they removed dairy from the diet. What was interesting is this: for a year, these women who removed dairy from their diet did not have one recurrent yeast infection. So if you are a female suffering from a recurrent yeast infection, if you remove dairy, there's a very, very good chance you'll never have another recurrent yeast infection again. So that's a very natural, healthy way to help manage this if you have a yeast overgrowth problem. Also, when they were looking at people who suffer from CRC, the Candida hypersensitivity, the chronic yeast infections, those type of things, is that almost all of them were showing deficiencies in magnesium, iron, selenium, and zinc, all of those minerals. So those are also great supplements. Look for foods high in those minerals. That would be really important. So you're going to look for stuff high in magnesium, high in iron, high in selenium, and high in zinc. Get that in your system. That's also going to help manage the overgrowth and reduce levels. Lastly, what I want to talk about is some food that you can do, that you can bring into your diet that's also going to help. So garlic, coconut oil, and oregano oil, all of those actually inhibit the growth of Candida. They stop it. It inhibits it. So it's a really easy thing to throw into your diet. If you're worried about Candida, is to increase your garlic. Use coconut oil. Replace that with, instead of using some of your other oils, start adding coconut oil into your diet. Oregano oil. Use those natural food items to help really balance out the Candida and get it back into normal levels that you feel more comfortable with, that make you feel the best, so you're not having these systemic reactions. So if you really feel like you are somebody who is suffering from CRC or Candida hypersensitivity, reach out, grab a consultation. We can talk, dive into what you're going through, dive into the symptoms, and get you feeling better fast. So please like, comment, share, let me know what you think, and we'll talk to you soon.